So my name is Benjamin Degenhardt. I am originally from Germany, longtime New Yorker. As of 2.5 years ago, a global nomad. I am a Pilates teacher, educator, and as of about 5 years ago, also really interested in software development as it relates to online education and e-learning, and um, been focusing on having those two worlds intersect in a project that is called 360 Pilates, which I'm the founder and director of. Yeah, that's me in a super small nutshell.
There you go.
My elevator pitch, if you will.
Yes, I love talking elevator pitches. Some people are so polished, and other people are like, Troy's like, I change springs for a living.
Perfect.
It's like,
Yeah,
that's perfect. Let's go with that.
which I
Um,
don't anymore. So sometimes I have this identity crisis of like, yeah, I'm a Pilates person, but not really a teacher
y-
anymore. I work with the
yes.
work on a high level, but not like that. It's a whole thing.
Do you and it's interesting that you say that because like the more you dive into different parts of your work that you're passionate about, you lose one other part of it. Do you ever feel like you're a little bit of an imposter in that part of it because you're not teaching on a daily basis?
I did for a really long time, Martin. I have to say that, especially in the beginning, when I started exploring what life might have in store for me in terms of, not just in terms of career, actually in everything but the career part, I felt really settled with my Pilates teaching. I was a teacher trainer for a national certification program. I felt like career-wise, I'm all set. Started speaking
Mm,
at conferences, teaching workshops on the side. I was super happy, but then this lust for travel, this wanderlust came up for me and my partner, and we both felt New York wasn't going to be the place that we're going to retire in one day. So the
yes.
idea of just taking our lives on the road and seeing the world and experiencing the world, and just trying to make our work, career, and relationship more malleable and portable became
Yes.
sort of a big project. And with that came the concessions and the compromises of, well, that means I cannot
Yes.
see clients, right? So I have
Hmm.
to amp up on the workshop teaching and really networking in that section of the community.
Yes.
Doing work online and all of those things had to be amped up. And the downside of that was having to let go of the more mundane parts, if you will, which now I really
Yes.
miss. Like I
Of
haven't
course.
touched a non-teacher's feet for footwork in years at this point,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
there's always that piece where you feel like you're missing a really profound, fundamental part of this work. And I mean, I've
Right.
done it for a long enough time, and I still have the same fascination that I've always had for Pilates in my own practice, but yeah, in the beginning, I really felt like, I cannot operate in a different piece of the Pilates industry unless
Yes.
I'm really doing the groundwork. And that has shifted quite a bit, where I realized, well, and not in a been there, done that kind of way, but in
Hmm.
I need to make space for something else. I realized that I
Yes.
have interests and a sensibility and a delivery style for the way that I interpret the work that was really useful and helpful to the people that I got to work with. And
Hmm.
in order to bring that to the forefront, I had to create this outlet for myself. And so
Absolutely.
it was in service of like stepping into, I don't even want to say a greater purpose, but a different one. And that makes me feel very okay with having to dial down on the other pieces. And
Yes.
things come in ebbs and flows, and I now find myself in a situation where I might well be able to go back to that, and start working at a studio, maybe opening my own, and teach Pilates. Never
Right.
say never, but this segue for the last few years was super important for me.
And
um,
I love what you said there about that greater purpose because it's not like you gently said greater purpose. Not to say that one is lesser or greater, but I would say it's a greater purpose for you. Just recognizing the time and season that you're in, because the reality is that everyone can teach Pilates, but not everyone can do that specific software entrepreneurial, distance education, continuing education niche that you can, right? So less people can do that, right? So you make
Maybe. I think everyone can do anything, if you
yes,
set your mind to it. And it's,
yes,
but yes, I think you're right. For me, it's perhaps my greater purpose, just because when I show up more fully for what it is I'm doing and with more interest and with more of a self-imposed challenge, then I rise to my own occasion in a different way than if I just do, you know, the thing that I've been doing for 10 years and that I've gotten really comfortable with. So there's a growth in that in its own way. And
Yes.
I think that's what makes it a greater purpose, not that it's
Yes.
better or more
No.
lucrative, you know, like, let's face it, there's no money in Pilates.
Yes.
But, you know, the reward and the fulfillment and the idea that you're trying to tap into a place that has been unexplored,
Yes.
of which there are many in Pilates, which is why it's such a wonderful career, right? There's so many different places where you can contribute and participate in the industry. And carving out the one that has you step up to your highest purpose, I think is what we all should be doing.
Absolutely. And I draw the parallels within my life that resonates with me when I think about these core conversations and how I've been doing these conversations since March. And just in response, when everyone was just doing online classes, I thought, well, let me do a show where I can just highlight the people doing the classes and just circumvent that long getting to know you process of who this person is and who's the man behind the brand, woman behind the brand, and just do this. And now it keeps going and going. And yes, everyone can do an Instagram live, but I feel so alive doing this that as much as I love teaching people and having my hands on people, this really is the highlight of my day.
Yeah, and even though you're saying, again, I'm going to come back to this, even though you're saying everybody can do an Instagram live, I beg to differ. First of all, I mean, yes, everybody's kind of doing Instagram lives. I don't actually, like, I've gone the exact opposite way, but nobody can do an Instagram live the way that you do them for the people that you can reach and in the way that you do them. So nobody can do what you do. So the fact that you've been doing this since March, I think is admirable. I think I can speak for many who are listening in on this. It really filled a gap of connection that we're all missing this year. I feel like it's been the greatest thing for me to just see you hang out with all my friends that I usually get to see once a year at a conference. I was just like, yes, this is great. And you're doing it all. So
thank you.
I don't think anybody can do it. So give yourself some credit, Martin.
Okay, I'll give myself that piece. But it's so funny, Headley. There is that dichotomy between and anything is possible. You can do anything you want, and you really can't do that good. Like that's, what I mean? Like we're always in this dance between these things, but I think it comes back to passion, really, right? And
100%,
yeah. And tell me more about your 360 Pilates online, because that is so unique for the amount of people that have Pilates instructional videos out there. This is so special.
Thank you. Yeah, it's this is another example, I think, of something that just happened organically. I did not set out to create a software or an e-platform, an e-learning platform to contribute to the industry in that way. It just happened because I felt passionate about it and because I felt like there was a need and a gap in the way that I saw Pilates education coming into this digital age a few years ago. And a lot of it really had to do with my work as a teacher trainer, as well as an itinerant workshop teacher. I think I can honestly say that I've met teachers around the world in all different pockets and understand the bigger picture of the industry quite well as a result of that. And what I've really sort of examined and analyzed was the types of questions that I've gotten about the work and the place where I felt I was at my most useful and helpful. And then there was the piece where I just felt like I was constantly on the road and, like the monsters you create, right? Like at some point you're just like, I want to make my life more portable. And before you know it, you're on a plane every freaking Thursday and again, every freaking Monday, and you don't spend time at home anymore. And all of a sudden you realize, well, 90% of what I do every single weekend in different places of the world can be taught in a different kind of way and delivered in a different kind of way. And I just started looking at the work in terms of what is the thing that I can only deliver in person when I'm in the physical presence of somebody, when there's that energy exchange, there's a physical exchange, there's a three-dimensional aspect to it. What is that relative to anything else, the theory, the exposure to the work, the observation of the work, etc. So the idea was born to create like a digital exhibit of the work. And 360 is not an instructional platform. Like nobody's teaching you how to do Pilates on there, because I don't think you can do that online, ironically. But what 360 does is give you truly a full circle view of the method in its entirety, every piece of apparatus, every exercise, how they relate to one another. So you can Netflix binge your way through one exercise, not necessarily in a, hey, you might like this exercise, but in a, hey, you're looking at long stretch. Here are the 5 million places that build up to that, and where you go from here. And it's really just evocative more than this is the way you must do it. So it's really an offering into the traditional work, the way that I've researched it. I'm a huge history nerd on Joseph Pilates and the sort of thought process in how the work came together. And I wanted to solve this problem of how to translate the sensitivity of this beautiful system into an online platform, into almost a software algorithm, which is impossible as it turns out. But I think we've gotten really, really close with it. And I'm super insanely proud of it. And it's been a huge labor of love for the last 7 years, I believe, starting from wrapping my head around producing films. We used a very unique system of filming things from different angles so that you can really see things from all sides, to then the whole online stuff, putting a website together, creating, a business structure around that. I mean, it's pretty endless. So I'm really proud of how it came out, and it's that's my thing now.
Yeah, it's like, I remember the first time I saw the website, I was like, what is this? This is absolutely brilliant. Guys, if you haven't checked out his website, it is next level. I was speechless. I was absolutely speechless with it, because Pilates is so, it's really trapped in its original form, and you've given it a new life, paying homage to its original form. So you know what I'm saying? Like it's really interesting the way you've done it, where you've kept it so pure, but you've modernized it so much.
And you know what I think the key is, and this sort of like speaks to a bigger thing I observe in the industry. I think the key that makes it so malleable is that there's no, or little to no, personality attached to it. What 360 offers is really just the work. You get to look at it. You don't hear anybody talk you through it. You get to make up your own mind about it, because I think what modernizes, if you want to use that word, what modernizes the work or what brings it to life is the people whose hands it's in. So, and that's really very much how this platform was put together. The idea was, we're just offering a look at the work, take it or leave it, do something great with that knowledge, and let's package it in a way that even in 100 years, we can still look at it and it's timeless, which, is difficult in the way that we talk about Pilates today. I think it's very much about, the greatest teachers and the masters and the elders and this program and that program. And there's no common ground in the roots necessarily, whether you believe in them or not, whether you adhere to them or not. I think the commonality of like understanding this is where this comes from, this is why it's so genius in its own way. I think really is unifying, and that's ultimately gratifying to see, like, oh, we can all get along, when we have a sense of what the philosophy of this is. And that's, like the thing that always is endearing about March Madness, and just seeing everybody get a kick out of the mat work for a month and get silly with it and pump each other up. Like, and that's where I want to operate in the industry.
You remind me, I'm a car guy, and
I'm not.
Okay,
disclaimer.
So this should be a good example for you then, because you're not a car guy, because this might still resonate with you. It's like a Porsche 911 that this year they brought back the manual transmission after 3 or 4 years, because they said all this market research says that no one really drives it anymore. We don't need to sell it anymore. We don't make any numbers on it. And the people responded and said, no, this is the true work. Like, this is what the ethos of this car is. So you can modernize as much as you want, but it has to come back to the manual. And I feel like this is like sort of what you did. Like, we can there's so many people that come out with new ways and new exercises and contemporary this and modern this. It's like, well, no, this is the ethos of what it is. And you can interpret it however you like, but you not being a car guy 50 feet away can recognize a Porsche 911.
Yes, 100%. And funny enough, like I was having similar thoughts this summer because, you know, being in Cyprus for 5 months where they drive on the wrong side of the street, you know what I mean? Like, and everything is on the other side of the street. I had to not only get used to driving stick again, but it was also, everything was on the other side. And I mean, talk about this is the real work. I was just like, I have never been this present riding the car.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. But, and now I lost my trail of thought, but I was going to say something about that
the ethos
too.
and the real work.
Yes, yes. I think when you operate in continuing education, as me and many of you know my peers are, like that's where you know the place of the industry that I know best.
Yes.
I think you can approach continuing education from two perspectives, probably more. But you know, like most of what I see is if this is the baseline of what a Pilates teacher knows and operates off of every day.
Yes.
Most of continuing education happens up here, where there's more exercises, more apparatus variations, more modifications, more protocols for different kinds of people. And the place where I like to operate is down here, more foundation, more understanding, more intentional clarity. And in my case, more linkage to where all of this comes from, because it's so powerful and inspiring to just kind of look at, you know, the sort of the method coming of age, if you will, and seeing that evolution and putting yourself in perspective to that. I think it's just so powerful.
It is so powerful. And that answers the question in my own head of how I reconcile this conversation around digital versus live education. When I was working at Lifetime, I was like their onboard, so their education specialist. So every personal trainer that came into the company went through me, did their onboarding and learned like all the stuff about the company, and then personal training, all those different things, and went out to their respective club. And then they went to an on-demand platform where it's this hybrid of digital classes they could take and then practicals in the thing. And you know, obviously there's this pushback because people valued learning from someone with skin on, as opposed to sitting in front of a screen. How engaged are they going to be? Are they just pressing the forward button, or are they actually learning? So when you say about teaching the basics and the fundamentals, that makes sense to me, because it's like, okay, well, they can still get the fundamentals and keep referring back to it and getting it there, and see some value there, instead of giving them some high level concept and then they don't catch what we're saying, the ethos of the actual exercise and what the foundations were and stuff. So that makes sense to me, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I think there's only so much that, you know, and especially now, I think we're all brought to our limits as far as how much we can absorb online, because there's just so much content, and which is great in so many ways, right? But it's also really driving home this idea that there are just certain things that are just best left for the real life space. For the real interaction, and that can't be consumed. And I think that's, I don't know if that's your experience too with digital learning in general, but there's a lot of information being just consumed. And I think Pilates is not something to be consumed. It's something that has to be experienced, embodied. And there are pieces of that can be understood on a theory level, that can be understood and appreciated on a purely visual observatory level, but then the rest of it is just not, you don't consume Pilates, you do it.
You do it,
you are it.
Absolutely. And I think that's why, you know, as much as I love podcasts and I have my own podcast, I'm not a person who would just listen to podcast after podcast. It's because I've said this in the past, we get obese with information. We're not actually doing anything with it. We're just taking it in and taking it in, taking it in. When the reality is that if I listen to one podcast and applied 75% of what I listen to, instead of listening to 75 podcasts and applying 1% or forgetting 100% of what I heard, I'd be further ahead.
Yeah.
You know,
we should seek depth and not just more, you know, and I think that's really been my takeaway from this year so far. Like I'm definitely like a silver lining kind of guy. And I'm, you know, from the moment like this world turned to pieces, I was just really hard to focus on, like, what's this telling me, what's happening here,
Yes.
and this understand, like, not understanding, but this, like, I think trust and belief that there are so many positive things to be learned in this time,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
within all the hardship that we're all
Hmm.
facing. But like, even it just has fissured so many of our belief systems in so many ways to sit with ourselves
Hmm.
this much. And I
Yes.
think there's just, you know, speaking of light at the end of the tunnel, but I think it's there. We're still in the middle of the tunnel in so many ways. But
Yes.
I think this understanding that sitting with what you already have rather than just like seeking more to distract yourself
Yes.
is really interesting. So again, this is where I applaud you for the elegance that you bring to these conversations and the regularity of them, and just like sticking to it and understanding, hey, there's a need for connection right now. Like
Yes.
because my instinct was to run away from Instagram right away.
Hmm.
I was just like, I'm not going to go into a panic and broadcast my life and my feelings. I
Yes.
was really going into hiding in a lot of ways because I'm more of an introspective kind of guy.
Hmm.
I'm really an introvert at heart. So initially I was just like, wait, you're going to lock me up and I don't have to talk to anyone for a couple of weeks? Sign me
Yes.
up.
No way.
Introvert, just like, okay, I can do this.
Yes.
But then you really start learning what you're craving and what you're missing, and it's that
Yes.
piece of connecting to the people you already know, connecting to like-minded people who you have something in common with, seeking them out, finding good ways to find them in the first place. I think those things
Yes.
become more important rather than just getting inundated and, as you say, just listening to 10 hours of TED Talks every day just to pass the time.
Right.
It's probably
Well, you
less
said
meaningful.
the distraction word is really it there. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like that really is one of those coping mechanisms. So it's just be like, okay, let me just distract myself with a bunch of stuff instead of really taking that time to pause and to reflect and introspectively look at what I need to do next, where I am
Yeah.
right now. And, even on, like, as much as we talk about, COVID and the pandemic and isolation, even with this racial awakening too, right? Like, there's a lot of things that come out of this that, as negative as it is, there's a lot of positives that come out of it when we start to look at ourselves, learn about ourselves, get this resolved within ourselves to move forward, to speak out, to not speak out. Like, we find our spot in the world in a better way.
Yeah, I
And
think,
it's interesting that way.
yeah, I mean, there's no coincidence in timing too, right? With the momentum that is given to that sort of introspection right now. And I think that's super important to honor and acknowledge, and to
Yes.
really sit with that and
Hmm.
understand, like, how do I relate myself to that?
Yes.
And yeah, it's funny. There was definitely a moment during this whole pandemic where, like, and I'm sure we all get to that place where you just question every life decision you've ever made,
Right.
in
Yeah.
terms of, okay, so here I am, like, I'm on the road, I'm living with two suitcases, I don't have a steady home, I don't have a steady job, and here I am stuck on an island, literally in the mountains next to a donkey farm for I don't know how long.
Donkey farm. Nice.
Yeah, but even then, I think it's all just a mindset of allowing yourself to observe what's happening and
Yes.
study it,
Yes.
and again put yourself in relationship to that, because yeah, there's no coincidences. I feel like,
No.
the universe is giving us a bit of a gift right now and a bit of a cleanse in
Absolutely.
a lot of ways, and just becoming more intentional with what we consume, whether that's um, food, exercise, information, and so
Yes.
forth. Yeah, and
Yeah.
actually, like, the word distraction is something that I feel like is so inherent to the work that we do. Because I often felt, and I'm sure working at Lifetime, you've had this experience as well. So I worked for Equinox for a really long time.
Yes.
Loved working for the company mostly because there was this clear um, place for Pilates to coexist alongside other things. So I always felt
Yes.
like this is awesome because Pilates doesn't have to be anything other than Pilates. It doesn't also have
Hmm.
to be spinning and yoga and therapy and this and that. I'll
Yeah.
just do my thing here because for everything else, there's another piece of equipment or a trainer somewhere like within reach. So
Right.
I'll just do my thing here. But at the same time, in that environment, you learn so much about the the typical exercise behavior and the way that people relate to exercise. And I feel like very often that's what makes Pilates such a difficult sell almost, because people crave distraction, even in their exercise.
Yes.
They want the loud stuff. They want the hard stuff. They want the sweaty stuff because it distracts them from, you know, the introspective work that we do in Pilates, for example, where it's really just about, okay, what you got, you know, and so yeah, I think like distraction and freeing ourselves from it when it doesn't serve us is, I think, a huge theme for me this year. I don't know how that hits you.
It does, absolutely. It's a conversation around disciplines too, right? Like that the distraction is almost the opposite of it. It's like, instead of being disciplined with being present, being here with myself, figure out what I need. It's like, oh, look at that, something shiny over there. Let me just, we go through that whole process, and we you know, and we know it for our clients too. They want that quick fix. They want something that's going to instantly solve stuff. And we're no different as those teachers and coaches. Like we're looking for that next thing. So can we pause to find what's best for us? No. Okay, we'll shut the world down so you have some time to figure that out on your own.
Yeah.
Right?
That's 2020 in a nutshell, right?
Yes. That is it. Can we circle back to the history thing you were saying? Like, I'm really fast. Like Martin yesterday was talking a lot about history and Black history and all those different things. And our Pilates history, it is so rich. You had that time. I know you did the interview with the author of Cage Lion as well.
Yeah, John Steele. Yeah, about
John Steele.
I don't even know when. You know, like things like Monday or tomorrow or April don't really mean anything anymore to me. But it was very recently.
That's awesome. It was pretty recently. It wasn't like it was like 6 months ago.
No, more like 6 days. Yeah, so my interest in the history of Pilates was, I think it had a lot to do with my upbringing in Pilates, for one. Okay. You know, I'm not going to go into detail here, but my original exposure to Pilates was uber classical, right? I was trained here in the Netherlands, actually, when I studied here, by 3 different Romana trained teachers. So that's the Pilates that I grew up with. Okay. Then, you know, graduated from my dance training. I injured my shoulder, had surgery. So I really got into Pilates at the time because it was the one thing I could do to sort of, you know, help me get back on stage. I was ready to audition finally in my life, and I couldn't because of this injury. So you know, Pilates was my lifeline in so many ways. And then fast forward, moved to New York and got the first certification I could because I really just wanted to teach this stuff, not knowing that there's more than one interpretation of Pilates. The training I signed up for was the extreme opposite of classical. It was super contemporary, super valuable and great, but completely confusing to me because, you know, I just didn't know what Pilates was at that point. So
it's like, what is truth, right?
Yeah, it was just like, okay, so do I do it turned out or parallel? Do I do it 3 times or 10 times? Do I squeeze my abs or my butt or my this, or do I relax everything? It's very confusing. Right? So again, fast forward a few years, and I found myself sort of reintroducing myself to the classical work just by understanding like the different schools of thought within the work. And I've done 3 certifications along the way, and ultimately became a teacher trainer for a certification program that was classical. And that was the point where I felt like, okay, so now I'm standing here and I have this wealth of knowledge of all different Pilates interpretations. But when something simple is being asked, like why does the roll up follow the 100? I have no better answer than saying, that's how it's in the book. That's how it's done. Don't question it. It's in the Pilates Bible. Shut up and move. And that was never a good enough answer from me. And so I just started going down this rabbit hole of trying to get into, you know, not necessarily the biography of Joseph Pilates. Like, you know, there's a lot of soap opera when it comes to his life, but I was really interested in the thought process in developing the work as we know it. And you know, long before short, I figured out that he lived as a young adult in my hometown in Germany, which was just mind blowing to me. So of course, enter my obsession with just finding everything out that I could. And I'm getting introduced by way of my late grandfather to sort of gymnastic practices of the time, what physical culture in Germany looked like at the time. And lo and
Yes.
behold, they learned Pilates exercises in the early 1900s. They weren't called that because Pilates was 18 at the time.
Right.
We call them Pilates now, but it started dawning on me that whatever we call Pilates now wasn't just, coming out of nowhere. This guy was not sitting in front of a blank canvas and invented movement.
Right.
He fused physical culture, gymnastics,
Yes.
boxing practices, and all of this stuff. Even the apparatus existed in some way, shape, or form. He just made them his, and over the course of his life, it formulated this work that we now call Pilates. And that history, and just getting really clear on the inspiration that brought it all together, looking at how after he moved to the States, things changed. The introduction of springs,
Yes.
the reason why Clara wore a nurse's scrub. There's so many interesting details that you learn along the way that we still don't collectively know as an industry.
Right.
I feel like I still read the hospital bed war hero stories on every Pilates website, even though we kind of now know that that's not true. But again, that's the soap opera stuff.
Yes.
The interesting stuff to me is just really the intentional clarity in the work that just never wavered in the decades that Joseph Pilates worked with this stuff. And even though little things have changed here and there, I think the clarity in that philosophy and taking that forward is really what I want to teach people. And I've said this for the last few years. I don't teach Pilates anymore. I teach the philosophy of Pilates in a way that is accessible, and I don't care what kind of reformer you work out on. I don't care what dogma you subscribe to when it comes to Pilates. But if we're doing it from this place of intentional clarity, I think we're all doing the same work.
Yes.
And that's, and a lot of it is in that word distraction.
Yes.
What is Pilates when you take all the distractions
when you
out,
peel everything away?
When you peel it all away, what's left?
Yes.
And it's still very defined. It's not anything goes, pull your navel to your spine and you call it Pilates, or, like have a spring involved and it's Pilates. No, there's a method to this, and there's a system that is very clearly defined. And again, enter 360. That's what I wanted to codify and present in a way that doesn't have, the waving index finger above it, as in this is the way to do it, but like, hey, look at this, let it inspire you, because I believe it's super inspiring. Once you see the system unravel, it's just crystal clear.
Absolutely.
And I know you asked me about history, and I gave you War and Peace, essentially, but
that's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. I keep saying that because it almost is, Benjamin. It seems like your teaching, your education background in terms of taking classical and then also taking like uber contemporary type teacher training courses lends to your credibility to present 360 where it is very objective, and it's not your social commentary on each exercise. It's just each exercise.
Yeah. It's really funny, like being still somewhat of a younger participant in the industry, when there's people that have done this for 50 years and so forth. I, like, once I started becoming more vocal and more visible in the industry, like people try to put me in a box, right? Oh, so you're a classical teacher, or you're a contemporary teacher, or you're somebody who bridged from here to there and then back again. And I'm just like, well, my belief system actually is that all Pilates since 1967 is contemporary. Period.
Really?
Romana was the first one to interpret the work in the way that she saw fit. I think everything after Joe, and maybe Clara Pilates, is a contemporization of the work. And unless we all recognize that, we're not going to get rid of the hierarchies within the work that are so self-imposed and unnecessary, I think. And I think we can't get to the truth of just understanding how we can take this work forward, because the division just that conversation never went anywhere. It's not going to go anywhere if we continue it. So I think, taking it from a slightly different angle and understanding, like, okay, so Joe's dead, Clara's dead. A lot of the elders don't operate on that level anymore or draw from memories from many moons ago. So what can we learn from the factual, documented, original work just by letting it speak to us and sort of connecting the dots in our own way? Because ultimately, as teachers, that's what we do. I don't know a single teacher who is a carbon copy of their teacher. And that's the beauty of dissemination, and that's the beauty of education. And I think, you know, now that we're sort of at this turning point where all of us realize we gotta somehow operate in the online space, whether we chose to or not. I think the question, how do we translate this work into the digital age, is super pressing and super important. And again, we talked about this in the beginning. We're kind of coming full circle here. Like, what's the greater purpose? I feel like for me, that is something that I'm really passionate about and curious about. Because my question is always, like, not how can we make Pilates more successful or relevant next year, but what are people going to know about Pilates in 150 years? They're probably not going to care about the same stuff that we care about right now. A lot of the loyalties to a specific teacher or lineage will fade. What's going to be left when you peel it all away? So, yeah.
That's a great question. Well, I've said it this way in different contexts, but I'll say it here. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
I love that.
From your
Print
perspective,
that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. Well, from your perspective, what is the main thing?
Yeah. You know, my answer is not going to fit on a t-shirt. I can tell you that much. And there's, you know, slightly different ways to answer that, I believe. But when it comes to Pilates, I think the main thing is to have an understanding of the work that Joseph Pilates called Contrology. I think, and that is to me the main thing, because it's the source code of everything that followed. And unless you can relate yourself to that in one way or another, you understand that this was body work, systematic body work. It was not even, I don't even think you should call it exercise or fitness, even though it qualifies as such, you know. But I think the main takeaway for this is not necessarily about toning that muscle or using, you know, doing functional fitness. Those are all beautiful side effects of this. This was a movement modality that, by showing up and doing it regularly and doing it often and ultimately owning it yourself, meaning you're not being taught, you're just doing it, you're practicing it, which is also something that's hard to replicate nowadays. But this is a movement training modality that is ultimately for you. It's not for the teachers that hold the knowledge hostage. The knowledge is yours to cultivate, practice, own. And that's Contrology. And understanding that, whether you can interpret it that way or not, is a whole different story. But I think the main thing for me is understanding that piece. And then we all have to collectively come together and figure out how to put that into, you know, a way of delivering the work that is going to remain relevant and successful and continues to give us a career and continues to give people their bodies back.
You have just summarized my last 100 guests on Core Conversations with those comments.
That was my goal. Yeah, I watched the last 100 and that's awesome.
No, that's, as Joel was to say right there, well said. That absolutely, that's it. That really is it. And
cool. I'm glad I wrapped that up for you.
You wrapped it up beautifully. So we're both at Brink this weekend.
Yes, we are. I'm so excited.
Same. So you're running a workshop, a roundtable on.
Yes, I will moderate a roundtable on
entering
Friday.
and evolving in the online space.
Yes. So the idea, this is a conversation I've been having many times with the 360 community. We're doing a monthly meeting with them as well. And, you know, this idea of how do we enter the online space? How do we, you know, not necessarily get completely caught up in it, but bring ourselves to it is one that I am passionate about having. And I'm happy to get to moderate it. I have, I believe, Erica Quest on the panel and Terrica Thomas. So I'm super excited for that. I can't tell you what time it is because I'm in a different time zone and I keep getting them wrong. So I think, Martin, you probably have a link
I have it at 12 p.m. I see. I have it on my laptop here. So it's at 12 p.m. But I'm not sure. I think they're. I'm not sure if she's Central or Eastern. Let's confirm that.
Yes, we should. What are you teaching?
I'm teaching the blueprint of our business, and that's a breakout session at 1:30 on Saturday. I'm not sure what time zone that is. But it just captures some of the things we were saying earlier, where I'm not taking it from the technical side, but I'm taking it from the tactical side, looking from the inside out at, what are our passions and who are our mentors? Who are we surrounding ourselves with? And what are the passions that drive us into 360 Pilates online or core conversations or those sort of things, right? So it's one thing to talk about those things and to just like Pilates and like helping people. It's another thing to be propelled forward by your passion. So that's awesome. That's the teaser, no pun intended. For
Great, I'll be there. Yes. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So let me get to some of these comments because they were flying through as you were talking, as you were doing your dissertation of War and Peace. My brother Phil's online here, and he says that Benjamin is like the Robin Hood of the Pilates world.
The Robin Hood?
Yes.
I love that. I've actually said that about myself at some point, for different reasons perhaps than your brother.
Yes.
Because this is kind of a funny anecdote, so I'll share it. I think my husband wasn't too fond of the fact that, I started producing these videos for 360 about 7 years ago because it was really not cheap to do that and to bring my vision to life. But so I told him at the time, I had like a good amount of momentum at the time teaching workshops, and I was traveling a lot. So it was, at the time, Pilates was pretty lucrative for me. So I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to be the Robin Hood of Pilates, and all the money I make, I'll put back into this project. So it's truly, like bootstrapped in a lot of way, invested in by the Pilates community that I was teaching at the time. But so I've actually called myself the Robin Hood of Pilates.
Yeah. I love it.
Different reasons.
And it's just like, this is like kind of off the record talk, even though we're still on the record. How would someone like me support you with Pilates 360 online?
Simply put, by becoming a member, right? That's the greatest level of support. We are a very nimble team of 3 that are overseeing this project at this point. It used to have a whole workshop component attached to it, which again, it had to fall by the wayside in order to really zoom in on the requirements of keeping the software alive on a daily basis, which anyone in the tech profession will know what that means. So either, give us a follow online, ask us questions online. I'm highly accessible. I try my best to answer comments, questions, etc. on Instagram or email. If anybody wants to ask me questions there, it's benjamin@360pilates.com. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'd be happy to talk your ears off about 360 Pilates.
Yes.
We have different membership levels, so take a look if you're curious about it. And again, if you have any questions, just send them my way.
Would you recommend that every Pilates instructor be a member of this, just as a reference for their clients, and to be able to just say, here you go, this will answer some of your questions and I can answer the rest of your questions in real life?
You know what? I think it's worth for everyone to take a look, because I have not come across a single member of ours yet who has not found anything new in something that they already knew by using this tool. And it's been really beautiful to see just how diverse people, like the interpretation of how you can use this tool, how diverse that has become. People use it to demonstrate exercise during a session. They actually study an exercise together. They send homework to their clients with it. We're actually working on a client-facing app as well, sort of replicating Joe's original wall charts with a more digital version of that. But I made it for Pilates teachers. I like to think that it's a great resource for Pilates teachers who just want to continue their education, get inspired by the original work, perhaps fill some of the gaps they have in their understanding of it. And again, it lives off of the community that we're building. There's a little social network built into the site. So we're really trying to harness the collective knowledge of the membership community as well, because there's no guru at the top of this platform. It's all about the people that are part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, for those who are watching today, I think a lot of light bulbs went off, and giving that history, that dissertation has been so helpful. Like, I can't describe how helpful that has been for people like myself who's like, wow, that's really cool. And as soon as I get off of this, I'm like, I'm signing up because I can have this on this TV right here
There we
in the
go.
middle of, you know what I mean? Like, it's live, it's real, it's relevant. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's someone out there doing it. I think a lot of times as Pilates instructors, we have that silo mentality where it's just me and me doing my show, the Martin Reed show here. You're doing amazing work. So many people that we've had on here are doing awesome, awesome work. And we need to, collaborate. Like, there's a collective interest here in helping people move better. And I can't see a better way to do it than what you're doing. So kudos to you, man. Like, you're doing amazing work, Benjamin. I'm so glad we had a chance to have this chat.
Thank you so much. I
So
really, really
impressed.
appreciate it. Really great to meet you as
Likewise.
well. Yeah, I don't know if there were any other questions that we can get to. I'm not an Instagram Live person. This is my second time,
Okay.
so they just flew right by my eyes.
Honestly,
Um,
they flew through here. Um, I would love to take another conversation with you to talk about how Romana is considered contemporary, and everything's from 1967 forward is contemporary. Like no joke. You're talking and I'm like, oh, let's talk about that. No, let's go there. Okay, let's go there. No, wait, let's.
I will say, do not quote me on that. It's
Sure.
just an opinion and
Yes.
one that I can definitely justify in a lot of ways. There's probably a lot more to that. So to anyone
Yes.
listening, don't quote this out of context,
Yes.
if you don't mind. It's a provocative quote for a reason, but I stand by it
Yes.
nonetheless.
Hip Healthy Chick was mentioning, that's Tasha. She's also going to be at Brink. So true about distractions. I'm guilty of that too. I think a lot of us are. That was a great dialogue about this, distraction. Explore Pilates has left, but she was in here and she was commenting earlier as well.
Hmm.
And yeah, we have about 5 minutes. That was like a crazy fast hour.
I
Uh,
know.
any closing thoughts for our people?
Um, any closing thoughts? Good question. I don't think I have a particular message other than stuff I've already said. I'm a big believer in like looking at this time that is so difficult for all of us, one way or another. And I'm super sensitive to the hardship that some of us go through, especially those of us who own physical businesses.
Yes.
It's heartbreaking, and it's. I think it goes back to what you just said, Martin. Like, we need to get together and figure out how we can support each other,
Yes.
whether that's with digital help, whether that's with helping each other get online, keeping food on the table, keeping our
Mhm.
businesses up and running. Um, it's a really important time for that. At the same time, I think it's also a really great time to look inwards, free yourself from the distraction, and understand that there are probably some really positive things happening in your life right now. And I know
Yes.
for me personally, just focusing on that, not in denial of the negative stuff, but in celebration of the upsurge in creativity that I found, the quality time that I got to spend with loved ones,
Yes.
um, the ability to connect with people that sort of slipped through my fingers over the last few years, and
Mhm.
focusing on passion projects, right? Like, I think it's our responsibility to focus on that right now, so that we all have something to look forward to. So that's I think my closing thought
Great.
in summarizing this conversation.
Awesome. There's one last question we'll touch on here with our last 3 minutes. What piece of equipment would you recommend for clients to have at home during these times for self-practice?
Um, I'm like the worst Pilates role model these days. I have not been on any equipment in 5 months, which is just simply I didn't have access to it. So
Yes.
my obvious answer is the mat,
The math. Yeah.
right? If you feel like compulsive about like having to add more into your life, keeping it simple is completely valid.
Mhm.
And understanding that there's so much you can do in the absence of apparatus. In fact, again, here's my silver lining speech. If this time has taught us anything, I think it is that the mat is the heart and soul of all of this. It is
Yes.
that the years of being on the equipment were in service of teaching us how to survive on the mat.
Mhm.
So just bask in that a little bit longer and just miss the reform a little bit longer.
Yes.
That said, I would probably, if I could snap my finger and have a piece of apparatus show up behind me, it would be the window chair. But that's just the flavor of the day.
Right.
Honestly, it might be a barrel tomorrow morning. I don't know.
Right. Could be a tower, who knows? Yes.
Yeah,
Do you know
it'll
any
rotate.
other, do you know any websites or anything that might support me if I was doing some at-home work for Pilates out there that starts with,
Um,
like a 360 type website that shows,
I mean, I'm obviously a huge fan of Pilates anytime.
yeah. I was just setting up your
I'm
plug for your own website there. That's
yeah. Well, that's not my website, but like I also think just do your own thing. Just be
yes.
not taught for a while. Just take stock of where you are in your practice,
Yes.
and see what happens. Ultimately, you teach yourself, right?
Yes.
That's the secret sauce.
Absolutely. All right, 53 seconds. Benjamin, so great talking to you, man. I really
Same
enjoyed
here.
it. And we'll keep the conversation going because you're doing awesome work. And I'm so glad that we had a
Thank you.
chance to learn more about everything Pilates. So good.
Likewise, it was wonderful to connect with you in
All
person.
right.
Keep up the good
Okay.
work.